Hi, this is Nick Ball. I'm going to walk you through the process that a student would follow when completing an assignment as part of the Excel Educator series of instructional materials for teaching Excel to college students developed by Gov Allen and I at Brigham Young University. Now, the process starts when a student downloads a file off of our learning management system. Now, the file that they download is a macro-enabled workbook that a student would open up in the live Excel application. So when students complete an assignment as part of our instructional materials, they're always working in the live Excel environment. We'll talk about the benefits of that as we work through this video. When a student downloads a file, that file is embedded with a unique identifier for that student that'll help us do some pretty sophisticated things to track whether that student is completing their own work or whether they're getting inappropriate help from others on the assignment. But we'll talk about how we detect cheating when we talk about the gradebook feature of our product. So once a student downloads the file and opens it in Excel, the first thing that they do is click on the assignment tab that we've created as part of the ribbon for this particular workbook. The assignment tab gives the student access to the instruction sheet for the assignment, the task guide that we'll talk about here in just a second, and the ability to submit the assignment for grading and view the grading report for this particular assignment. So first they'll click on the instruction sheet. The instruction sheet generates a set of instructions for the student to follow that's opened up in a browser window. So you can see that there are a number of tasks associated with completing this assignment. Now the assignment page here lists the tasks, the points that are awarded for each task, and gives the student a description of each of the tasks that are to be completed. Notice that this assignment's broken up into 3 parts, and those 3 parts correspond with the 3 worksheets that are available in the workbook. Now, one of the things that you might be asking yourself is, isn't it kind of inconvenient for a student to have to keep flipping back and forth between the assignment sheet and the workbook where they're completing their assignment? And, it really is. So we've created this task guide button that the student can click that will generate a window that's populated with each individual task that they have to complete as part of the assignment. Now, one thing nice about this window is that it can be moved around. The student can put it anywhere on the screen that they want to get it out of the way for completing the assignment. And with the window open, they're still able to come down in the Excel environment and complete the task. So this particular task, for example, asks the students to add the value in cell C9 to the value in cell D9 and arrive at a sum of those 2 values. So now after completing this task, the student can come over here, mark the task done, and then arrow over to the next task. The next task asks the student to copy and paste their formula in cell E9 to complete column E here. So go ahead and copy and paste this and mark this particular task done. Now, I don't want to bore you by making you watch me work through this particular assignment, but I do want to navigate through a few tasks here to demonstrate a couple of things about the task navigation process. First thing I want to point out is that as we navigate through tasks here, you'll see that different cells in the worksheet are highlighted. Now, one of the things that we found in teaching our students is that in most cases, students will find the right place to do a task for an assignment. In some cases, they get things in the wrong place, but in most cases, they find the right place to do it. But they expend some energy in the process of finding where that we want that particular task to be completed. So rather than have students expend the mental energy to figure out where we want the task to be completed, we go ahead and highlight the part of the worksheet where that particular task needs to be done. Now, as we work through the tasks for this first worksheet and get to the end of this set of tasks, notice that the task window automatically moves the student to the next worksheet so that they're ready to complete the task for that particular worksheet. Now, I'm going to go ahead and complete this particular assignment, and then we'll talk about what it takes to grade. Okay, so now I'm back. I've completed the assignment, but I want to point out a couple of things about what I did along the way. So first of all, this task, as you may recall, asks us to add the value in C9 to the value in D9 to arrive at a sum for the exam scores for each student in the class. Now notice that what I did instead of adding those 2 values together was that I subtracted those values. Now the problem with that, of course, is that when I use that value later on, for example, when I calculate the total score in the class, or the percentage score, or the letter grade, that those calculations eventually rely on the calculations that I did for the total exam score in the class. So one of the things that we're trying to prevent with our grading system is that an error early on would create a cascading error that would cause students to lose a lot of points later on. This is something that we're able to engineer around as part of our grading engine. The other thing I want to point out is that this task asks the student to use the sum function to calculate the total number of homework score points that they earned in the class. Now you'll notice that I have the right value here, and my formula truly adds each of the homework scores together, but I don't use the sum function for that, and we'll see how the grader behaves as a result of that error that I created. The other thing I want to point out is that this particular assignment asks me to create a pie chart based on the information in table 4 here, and there's not a chart in my worksheet here. So let's go ahead and submit this file for grading anyway. To do that, we come to the Assignment tab, and under the Automatic Scoring group of items here, we click Submit. Now the first thing that happens is the grading system does a check. Now we're the only grading system out there that's capable of running a pre-check on a student's assignment before the assignment's actually graded. Now the pre-check system is really important. Among other things, it allows us to check for things that students might have done wrong that'll lead to massive point deductions if they're not corrected before they're submitted for grading. In this particular case, I've done everything except for insert the pie chart into the worksheet. And the pre-grade is smart enough to say, a complete assignment will contain a pie chart, and there's no pie chart in this workbook. Now we all have students that are submitting assignments just before they're due, and so they might want to click yes anyway to get as many points as they can because they're out of time. On the other hand, if they're ahead of the game and they're starting the assignment early, the pre-check is a nice way for them to get some feedback on their assignment before they actually submit it for grading. I'm going to go ahead and submit this anyway, knowing that I'll get some deductions for not having the pie chart in the assignment. When I click yes here, it asks for my credentials, which I've already entered. My credentials basically allow us to post the score to the learning management system, and that's done as part of the grading process. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. So let's take a look at the grade report. The first thing I'm going to point out is actually not related to the grade at all. You'll notice that some of the rows here, the first 2 rows, are grayed out in the grading report. Now, the reason why they're grayed out is these were the 2 tasks that I checked the box in the task window. I'll go ahead and show you what I mean here. I checked the box to show that that task was done. Now, I'll go back to those 2 tasks so you can see that they're checked. Now, the neat thing here is that because it's an Excel workbook, Excel really doesn't care if the student does the homework all in one setting or if they start a homework assignment, save it, and then pick up their work later on. And having those particular tasks that are done grayed out in the assignment window, even in the gradebook window, helps the student to know basically what they'd finished when the last time that they had worked on the assignment. Now, because students are using a workbook in Excel to complete their homework, they could actually save that file and bring it to another machine running Excel to complete the assignment, and the grader doesn't have any problem with that. In fact, a student could start an assignment on a PC, copy the file over to a Mac running Excel 2011 for the Mac, and complete the assignment over there, and the grader will have no problem with that whatsoever. They could even work in the opposite direction. They could start on the Mac side and finish the assignment on the PC side, and they can submit the assignment for grading in either platform. Now let's look back at the grading report. Now, where the assignment sheet just showed the number of points possible for each particular task, the grading report shows the number of points earned for that task and the number of points possible for that particular task. So as you can see, I missed 4 points for task 1. Now this was the task, if you recall, that I subtracted the second exam score from the first exam score rather than adding those 2 exam scores together. Now this highlights a couple of important things. The first thing it highlights is the fact that the grading system is robust enough to award partial credit to a student for a particular assignment task. In this case, we were looking to see if the student used the right cells as part of the formula. So did the student reference both cell C9 and cell D9 in doing the calculation? And we checked to see if the student ended up with the right value as a result. So in this case, I received points for having the right cell references in my formula, but I lost points for not having the right value. Now, some of the things that we can check for partial credit are we can check to see did the student use the right function? Or we could look at their function and break it up into the individual parts of the function to look at each argument or to look at each cell reference as part of their calculation. Another neat thing that we can do to award partial credit is that we can look at the cells that the student referenced as part of their calculation, and we can work backwards and change the values of those precedent cells to see what happens to the result when the student's calculation is completed. So not only do we look for the specific values that the student should have achieved for the data that was originally in the workbook, but we can also check to see if their functions are robust enough to handle changes to the precedent cells that feed into those functions. Now let's talk about the other important thing that this points out about our grading engine, and that is, if you recall, the value in E9 is necessary for calculating the total score for this assignment, the percentage score for the assignment, the letter grade for the assignment, and virtually every other calculation that's downstream from that second task or that first task. Now, let's go back to the grade report. As you can see that as we move through the later tasks, that I achieved full credit for each of those tasks, even though the values that were feeding into the formulas necessary for completing those tasks were wrong. The grading engine is smart enough to reconfigure the rubric on the fly and grade a student's work based on the values that are in the worksheet at that particular time. So the takeaway here is that errors don't cascade. When a student makes a mistake early on in the process, that mistake is their points are deducted for that particular mistake, but we don't take any more points for later values that rely on a correct value early on in the assignment process. That's a really great feature. So let's move on to the next part of the grading report. Notice that I missed some points here for not using the sum function in cell K9. Now that was something I pointed out earlier, that I used just adding those particular cells together to end up with the right value at the end. Notice that I got partial credit again for this particular task, and in this case I got credit for having the right value, for referencing the right cells, but not for using the sum function because I didn't use the sum function. Now, of course, I would also expect to have lost some points here for not having a chart. You can see some of the things that we're checking when we grade a chart. For example, we're checking to see if it's the right chart type, has the right values in the chart. In this case, we asked the student to show a legend, to have an appropriate chart title, something like letter grade breakdown, and to display data labels on the chart. And we'll go back and build the chart here in just a second. And as you can see, I got the rest of the points for the assignment correct. Now, one of the things that the grading engine allows you to do as a professor is you can decide whether it's appropriate for your students to correct errors in their assignments and resubmit the assignment for additional points or for more grading. So in this case, I've got it set up so that a student can submit this assignment several times. So I'm going to come back in and I'm going to fix my errors. So I'm going to go ahead and add the values for the exams. And I'm going to go ahead and use the sum function here to take the total homework score. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a chart. So the chart now is based on the data here in table 4. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a pie chart here. Okay, so my pie chart relies on the data in table 4, so I'm going to move it out of the way so I can pick that up. So just grab that data here real quickly. And I want my category labels here to be the letter grades that are associated with the groups of students here. Now if I recall, I needed a title like letter grade breakdown. So I'm going to go ahead and add that here. Also asked me to add data labels, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to make those labels show the percentage just for fun. Finally, it asked me to add a legend, but I'm going to go ahead and omit the legend. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the legend. And submit for grading. So now that I'm ready to do that, notice that I don't get the pre-check window because now I've done completed all of the elements of the assignment. Not necessarily correctly, but I've completed all the elements of the assignment, so I don't get the warning message anymore. Go ahead and click submit here. Look at my grade report, and I got full credit here for task 3, because I fixed it and used the sum function, and task 1 because I added my exam scores together. And as I move down here to task 14, notice that I got almost full credit for my pie chart, but I didn't show the legend on my chart, so I didn't get full credit for that either. So I can give partial credit even in objects in Excel like charts or pivot tables or the solver module or other objects that might be difficult for other grading systems to give partial credit on. So at this point I want to show you a few things about the assignment on the Mac side. First thing is that we're not able to modify the ribbon for Excel 2011 on the Mac. So students can come up to the assignment menu item and click on assignment tools here and get the same tools that are available to them on the Windows side. So they can generate an instruction sheet, they can show the task guide, submit the assignment, or view a graded report once the assignment's been submitted for grading previously. Now there's some other differences on the Mac side, but for the most part the tools work the same on the Mac side as they do on the Windows side. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go ahead and fix my chart. So I'm going to close out of my tool window here. I believe I needed to add a legend to the chart to get full credit here. So I'm going to come into my chart layout. I'm going to go ahead and add a legend to the right. And I'm going to submit this for grading. So back up to the assignment window here, our menu item, tools, and I'm going to submit for grading. Go ahead and enter my password. Click submit. So let's take a look at the grading report that was generated on the Mac here. Notice that the grading report is opened up in Safari, which is what we'd expect on the Mac side, or it could be whatever the default browser is on the Mac side. And essentially it's the same thing that we would see on the Windows side. In this case, I've fixed the problem with my chart. I went ahead and added the legend. So notice that I get full credit for this particular assignment. So this is the assignment view of the Excel Educator set of instructional materials. In other videos, we'll look at the learning management system associated with Excel Educator, and we'll look at the gradebook that allows professors some really important and interesting information about their students' performance on their assignments.